Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping right into Matthew chapter 17, and it's quite a chapter. I mean, it really covers a lot of ground, everything from this incredible divine moment on a mountain down to, well, paying taxes.
Yeah, it's that contrast that's so striking, isn't it? You get these glimpses of absolute glory right next to very human struggles and practical details. Really shows the breadth of Jesus' work.
Absolutely. So it kicks off with arguably one of the most amazing scenes, the Transfiguration. Jesus takes Peter, James, and John. Just those three.
It's the inner circle.
Right. Up a high mountain by themselves.
Yeah, and then, well, everything changes. The text says he was transfigured right there. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. It's like pulling back the curtain on his divinity for a moment.
Wow. And it doesn't stop there. Suddenly Moses and Elijah are there too, actually talking with Jesus.
Which is just huge. You've got the law, represented by Moses, and the prophets, by Elijah. Them appearing with Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like this massive confirmation. He's the fulfillment of it all.
It connects him to that whole history. And Peter, his reaction is so relatable, isn't it?
Oh, completely. He sees all this and basically says, wow, this is great. Let's build 3 shelters.
Like, let's capture this moment, stay here.
Exactly. A very human impulse, maybe kind of missing the point slightly. That's a temporary revelation. And while he's still talking,
This bright cloud overshadows them.
yeah, and a voice comes from the cloud, God the Father speaking.
And the message is unmistakable, similar to the baptism. This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him.
I mean, that's the ultimate endorsement right there. No ambiguity.
And the disciples. Predictably, they're terrified, fall on their faces.
Understandable reaction. But then Jesus comes over, touches them, tells them not to be afraid. And when they look up,
It's just Jesus. The vision's gone. The mountaintop moment is over.
and as they're coming down, Jesus gives them this specific instruction.
Yeah, don't tell anyone what you've seen.
Until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. Which is fascinating, landing that peak glory directly to his future suffering and resurrection. It frames the whole experience.
Yeah, the glory and the cross tied together right from the start.
Which then leads sort of naturally to their next question, doesn't it?
Right, because they've just seen Elijah. So they ask, based on what the teachers of the law say, why do they say Elijah must come first? They're trying to fit what they saw with the prophecies.
And Jesus says, well, yes, Elijah does come first to restore things, but then he drops the bombshell.
That he's already come.
Exactly. He tells them Elijah already came, but people didn't recognize him, and they treated him terribly.
And he makes that chilling connection.
In the same way the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands, he draws a direct line.
And the disciples get it then. The text says they understood he meant John the Baptist.
John was the Elijah figure, the forerunner. Rejected, killed, foreshadowing what would happen to Jesus. It's a tough lesson on how prophecy plays out and, the costs involved.
So you have this intense sequence, glory, prophecy, the shadow of suffering. And then they come down the mountain.
Literally back down to earth, into the crowd. And immediately there's a crisis. A man comes running up, desperate.
Kneels right in front of Jesus, pleading. His son has terrible seizures, falls into fire, into water. Just awful suffering.
A picture of complete desperation. But there's this key detail he adds.
Oh, yeah, the crucial part. He says, I brought him to your disciples, but they couldn't heal him.
Right. After everything, after the authority Jesus gave them, they failed.
That must have stung. And Jesus' reaction, it seems quite strong. He calls them an unbelieving and perverse generation.
It feels like real frustration, doesn't it? How long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? It seems aimed right at the disciples' lack of faith in that moment.
Yeah, a really raw moment. He then says, bring the boy here to me.
And just like that, the power is there. Jesus rebukes the demon, it leaves, and the boy is healed instantly.
The contrast is stark. Their failure, his immediate success.
Which, understandably, leads the disciples to ask him privately later.
Why couldn't we do it? They need to know.
And Jesus' answer is just as direct. Because you have so little faith.
He nails it.
Gets right to the point. But then, right after pointing out their lack, he gives this incredible teaching on what faith can do.
Yeah, the mustard seed. Even faith as small as a mustard seed, he says, can move mountains. And then the kicker.
Nothing will be impossible for you.
Wow. But from you failed because of little faith to nothing is impossible with faith, it's quite a jump.
It makes you think maybe the amount isn't the issue, but
Right.
what? Where the faith is placed, it's quality.
That seems to be the key insight, doesn't it? It's not about having massive quantities of faith, perhaps, but having genuine faith, even a tiny bit, that's actually for successes. That kind of faith connects you to his limitless power. Their little faith might have been more about misplaced reliance.
That makes sense, relying on God, not the formula. And then, almost immediately after this teaching on the immense power available through faith, they're in Galilee, and Jesus hits them with the second prediction of his death and resurrection.
He lays it out very plainly. The Son of Man is going to be betrayed, they will kill him, and on the third day he will be raised to life.
Clear as day. But how do they react?
The text says they were filled with grief.
Grief, even with the resurrection part included, the overwhelming immediate feeling is loss, betrayal, death.
It just shows how hard it was for them to grasp this idea of a suffering Messiah, even after seeing his glory, even after hearing about faith's power. The coming pain just overshadowed the promise for them in that moment.
But human reality hitting hard. And then the chapter shifts gears again, like completely.
Totally, from grief over impending death to everyday life in Capernaum. The temple tax collectors show up.
Right. They approach Peter and ask, pretty straightforwardly, doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax?
And Peter says, yes, he does. This seems simple enough.
But then Peter goes into the house, and before he can even bring it up...
Jesus speaks first. He already knows the whole conversation.
Amazing. And he asked Peter this question about kings and taxes. Who do they tax? Their own children or others?
Peter answers, others.
And Jesus draws the conclusion, then the children are exempt. It's subtle, but he's basically asserting his own status as the Son of God, exempt from a tax for his Father's temple.
A quiet claim to divinity right there in a tax discussion. But then he immediately pivots.
Yeah, he says, okay, but so that we may not cause offense, let's just pay it.
And the way they'll pay it is, well, unique.
Definitely unique. Go fish, Peter. The first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you'll find a 4-drachma coin.
Exactly enough to pay the tax for both of them.
It's this incredible little miracle, meeting a very mundane need. He has the authority to be exempt, but chooses to comply to avoid unnecessary trouble, and uses his power over nature to do it. Just wow.
So if you step back and look at this whole chapter, Matthew 17, it's just this whirlwind, isn't it?
It really is. You go from the absolute peak of divine glory, seeing Jesus transfigured with Moses and Elijah,
to grappling with prophecy and the prediction of suffering that brings deep grief.
to a moment of failure by the disciples, followed by this staggering teaching on the power of even tiny faith.
And landing on a practical, almost bureaucratic issue like the temple tax, solved by a fish with a coin.
It shows that following Jesus involves all of it, doesn't it? The spiritual highs, the confusing lows, the struggles with faith, the power available, and just the everyday stuff. It's not separate compartments.
Yeah, it's all woven together. And it leaves you thinking, what about that contrast? The disciples fail because of little faith, but then Jesus says, nothing will be impossible with mustard seed faith. What does that tell you about how we face things?
Or that tension between the Transfiguration's glory and the grief that immediately follows the death prediction. How do you navigate those moments of profound insight alongside the really difficult realities? It speaks volumes about the path of learning and following, I think.
A chapter that definitely keeps you on your toes, profound insights packed into every twist and turn.
A real microcosm of the whole journey.
Absolutely. Lots to chew on there for Matthew 17.